Ashe, and welcome to another special episode of our Mandatory Mental Liberation Message series, written and produced by our esteemed elder Baba Jelani Bomani Dembe, the brilliant founder of Majestic Mind Matters University. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin, for this new episode. The necessity of the Mandatory Mental Liberation series at Majestic Mind Matters University lies in our focus on serving our melanin-rich culture nation. By addressing the importance of knowledge of self to produce greater self-awareness and advocating for our mental liberation, especially for our precious melanin-rich culture children, our messages aim to combat the enduring effects of generational mental enslavement stemming from the historical trauma of the chattel enslavement of the ancestors. Our initiative seeks to empower us to break free from these harmful and unfavorable legacies and cultivate a deep-rooted sense of self-identity and unwavering resilience. In a world where words carry weight, these terms hold a history of oppression and discrimination. Our melanin-rich culture nation has not given up on the fight for liberation. We know that terms like Black or brown people, people of color, perpetuate stereotypes and homogenize our melanin-rich culture people. In this message, it will only be used to maintain clarity for those who are not yet up to our melanin-rich culture standards. By embracing indigenous terms like Alkebulan, this name means mother of mankind, in various African languages such as Akuyu, Swahili, and Kemet, referring to ancient Egypt, and rejecting the terms Africa or African, these oppressive terms, which are unknown to many, we are reclaiming our melanin-rich culture narratives and asserting our royal cultural pride. Our melanin-rich culture nation uses terms like chattel enslavement instead of slavery, and the enslavers or slavers rather than masters or slave owners, to highlight the brutal and dehumanizing nature of historical and systemic oppression. The term chattel enslavement emphasizes the objectification of the ancestors as property, rather than acknowledging them as humans. Referring to the oppressors as the enslavers or slavers, instead of masters or slave owners, shifts the focus to the injustice and violence perpetrated by those in power. These terms accurately reflect the systemic exploitation and inhumanity faced by our melanin-rich culture communities throughout history, challenging traditional narratives that downplay the severity of these atrocities. Knowing the power of language in shaping global societal perceptions and challenging systemic racism is our first step to true liberation. In this message, the term African American or Black may be used in order to convey understanding regarding the mindset of that time period. Many of our messages will shed light on our melanin-rich culture civilization individuals who have helped gain more ground towards our global unity. Each moment you spend with us is a gift, a chance to grow, to learn, to be inspired. So stay with us till the end, where the real magic happens. Now, let's get started with this very special melanin-rich culture message titled Unveiling the Shadows, Healing from Stockholm Syndrome in Our Melanin-Rich Community. In our collective journey as a melanin-rich culture civilization, we have experienced the devastating effects of chattel enslavement that have left deep-rooted wounds in our psyche. These wounds have manifested in various ways, one of which is the Stockholm Syndrome. The Stockholm Syndrome is a psychological phenomenon where victims develop feelings of empathy, loyalty, and even affection towards their captors. This syndrome can be seen in individuals who have been subjected to prolonged periods of abuse, manipulation, and power imbalance. As a result, they may begin to identify with and defend their oppressors, believing that their survival depends on pleasing them. In our melanin-rich culture community, the Stockholm Syndrome can manifest in various ways. We may see individuals making excuses for the actions of those who have historically oppressed us, downplaying the severity of their actions, or even blaming ourselves for the mistreatment we have endured. This internalized oppression can prevent us from fully acknowledging the harm that has been done to us and can perpetuate cycles of trauma and disempowerment. Recognizing the signs of the Stockholm Syndrome within ourselves and our community is crucial in order to begin the healing process. It requires us to confront the internalized beliefs and behaviors that have been shaped by our experiences of oppression. We must challenge the narratives that have been imposed on us and reclaim our agency and power. Recovering from the Stockholm Syndrome requires a collective effort to dismantle the systems of oppression that have contributed to our trauma. We must create spaces that allow us to process our pain and trauma and to support one another in our healing journey. This may involve seeking therapy, engaging in healing practices such as meditation and ancestral rituals, and connecting with our cultural heritage. In honoring our ancestors who endured the horrors of chattel enslavement, we must also recognize the resilience and strength that has been passed down to us. Our ancestors survived unimaginable cruelty and dehumanization, and their legacy lives on in us. By reclaiming our history and our culture, we can find strength and solidarity in our shared experiences. As we work towards global unification, it is essential that we confront the legacies of colonialism and slavery that continue to divide and oppress us. We must recognize the ways in which the systems of white supremacy and capitalism have perpetuated our oppression and work towards dismantling these systems in order to create a more just and equitable world for all. In our joint efforts to honor our ancestors and heal from the devastations of chattel enslavement, we must prioritize self-love, self-care, and community support. By standing together in solidarity, we can overcome the internalized oppression that has kept us divided and disempowered. Through collective healing and resistance, we can reclaim our power and create a future that is rooted in justice, liberation, and love. The Stockholm Syndrome is a manifestation of the deep trauma and internalized oppression that has been passed down through generations. By recognizing the signs of this syndrome within ourselves and our community, and by working together to heal and reclaim our power, we can break free from the cycles of trauma and disempowerment that have plagued us. In honoring our ancestors and our shared history, we can create a future that is rooted in solidarity, resilience, and liberation. As members of a melanin-rich culture and civilization, we have a shared history of resilience, strength, and unbreakable spirit. Our ancestors endured the horrors of chattel enslavement, a dark period in our collective past that continues to impact us to this day. In our joint efforts to unify globally and honor the sacrifices of those who came before us, we must also confront the psychological impacts of this traumatic history, including the pervasive effects of Stockholm Syndrome within our community. Stockholm Syndrome is a psychological phenomenon in which hostages or victims of abuse develop a bond with their captors or oppressors. This phenomenon can manifest in a variety of ways within our community as we navigate the lasting effects of centuries of oppression and systemic racism. One of the key signs to look out for is a sense of loyalty or empathy towards those who have historically oppressed us. This can take the form of minimizing or excusing the actions of individuals or institutions that perpetuate harm against us, or even internalizing negative stereotypes and beliefs about our own worth and value. Another sign of Stockholm Syndrome within our community is a reluctance to challenge authority or speak out against injustice. This can stem from a fear of reprisal or a sense of helplessness in the face of overwhelming systems of power that have historically worked against us. As we work towards global unity and empowerment, it is essential that we recognize and address these patterns of compliance and passivity that may be holding us back from fully realizing our potential and achieving true liberation. In our efforts to overcome the effects of Stockholm Syndrome, we must first acknowledge the deep-rooted traumas that have been passed down through generations of our people. The legacy of chattel enslavement continues to shape our experiences and perspectives, and it is essential that we create spaces for healing and introspection within our community. By centering the voices and experiences of those who have been most impacted by systemic oppression, we can begin to unravel the complex interplay of historical trauma and resilience that defines our shared identity. Education and awareness are powerful tools in the fight against Stockholm Syndrome and other forms of internalized oppression. By learning about our history and the ways in which our experiences have been shaped by systems of power and privilege, we can begin to challenge the narratives that seek to diminish our humanity and agency. Through critical reflection and dialogue, we can create a new narrative of empowerment and self-determination that honors the struggles and sacrifices of our ancestors while paving the way for a more just and equitable future. In our joint efforts to unify globally and honor the ancestors, we must also confront the ways in which Stockholm Syndrome manifests within our community. By recognizing the signs and symptoms of internalized oppression and trauma, we can begin to dismantle the psychological barriers that keep us divided and disempowered. Through collective healing and resistance, we can reclaim our agency and forge a path towards liberation and justice for us as well. As members of a melanin-rich culture and civilization, we have inherited a proud history and legacy that is deeply rooted in strength, resilience, and creativity. Our ancestors endured unimaginable hardships and atrocities, including the brutal horrors of chattel enslavement, yet they persevered and survived with dignity and courage. It is essential that we acknowledge and honor their sacrifices, as well as the intergenerational trauma that has been passed down to us. One of the most insidious legacies of chattel enslavement is the psychological phenomenon known as Stockholm Syndrome, where the oppressed develop a psychological bond with their oppressors. This syndrome has been used as a tool of control and domination by those in power to perpetuate systems of oppression and maintain the status quo. As members of a marginalized community, we must recognize the ways in which we have internalized the narratives and beliefs of our oppressors and take active steps to break free from the mental and emotional chains that bind us. In order to reclaim our identity and strength, we must first engage in the process of decolonization. This involves deconstructing and challenging the colonial mindset that has been imposed upon us and reclaiming our own narratives, histories, and ways of knowing. We must actively seek out and uplift the stories and voices of our ancestors and center their experiences and perspectives in our understanding of who we are. Education and self-awareness are powerful tools in this process. By learning about our history, culture, and traditions, we can begin to build a strong foundation of self-love and self-respect. We must also critically examine the ways in which the dominant culture has distorted and erased our stories, and work to correct these injustices. Additionally, community and collective action are essential in our journey towards liberation. We must come together as a unified force to support and uplift one another, and create spaces where we can heal and grow together. By building strong connections and relationships within our communities, we can create networks of support and solidarity that will sustain us in our struggle for liberation. We must also engage in the process of reclamation, reclaiming our culture, spirituality, and traditions that have been stolen and appropriated. This may involve reconnecting with our ancestral practices, languages, and belief systems, and rekindling the spiritual connections that have been severed by centuries of colonization and oppression. Furthermore, we must actively resist and challenge the systems of oppression that continue to marginalize and dehumanize us. This may involve participating in protests, advocacy, and activism to demand justice and equality for our communities. We must also advocate for policies and initiatives that promote equity and inclusion, and work towards dismantling the structures of power that uphold white supremacy and racial capitalism. In conclusion, as members of a melanin-rich culture, we have a responsibility to honor our ancestors, reclaim our identity, and break free from the mental and emotional bonds of the Stockholm Syndrome. By engaging in the process of decolonization, education, community building, reclamation, and resistance, we can work towards building a more just and equitable world for ourselves and future generations. Together, we have the power to heal, grow, and thrive in the face of adversity, and create a future that is rooted in love, pride, and liberation. As members of a melanin-rich culture civilization, it is imperative that we come together to honor our ancestors and their enduring spirit in the face of chattel enslavement. This dark period in our history has left deep wounds that continue to impact us as a people, but by acknowledging and addressing these psychological scars, we can begin the process of healing and moving forward as a unified global community. First and foremost, we must pay tribute to the strength and resilience of our ancestors who endured unimaginable hardships during the era of chattel enslavement. Their courage, perseverance, and unwavering faith in the face of adversity continue to inspire us today. It is through honoring their sacrifices and recognizing the sacrifices they made for us that we can begin to truly appreciate the depth of our heritage. One way in which we can honor our ancestors is by preserving and sharing their stories. By passing down the tales of struggle and triumph from one generation to the next, we ensure that their legacy lives on in our collective memory. This storytelling tradition not only honors the resilience of our ancestors, but also serves as a reminder of the strength and perseverance that runs through our veins. Additionally, we must create spaces and opportunities for collective remembrance and reflection. Events such as memorial services, commemorations, and cultural celebrations can serve as powerful tools for honoring the sacrifices of our ancestors and acknowledging the enduring impacts of chattel enslavement. By coming together as a community to reflect on our shared history, we can find solace in knowing that we are not alone in our struggles and that our ancestors are with us every step of the way. In acknowledging the psychological impacts of chattel enslavement on us as a people, we must confront the deep-seated wounds that continue to affect our collective consciousness. The trauma of enslavement has left scars that run deep, impacting everything from our interpersonal relationships to our perceptions of self-worth and identity. It is crucial that we confront these wounds head-on and seek healing through open dialogue, community support, and therapeutic interventions. One way in which we can begin to address the psychological impacts of chattel enslavement is by engaging in collective healing rituals and practices. Whether it be through traditional ceremonies, group therapy sessions, or artistic expressions, we must create safe spaces for processing our shared trauma and finding solace in our shared experiences. By coming together as a community to heal, we can begin to break the cycle of intergenerational trauma and pave the way for a brighter future for ourselves and future generations. Furthermore, we must also work towards dismantling the systems of oppression that continue to perpetuate the legacy of chattel enslavement in our society. By standing up against inequality, discrimination, and injustice, we can honor the struggles of our ancestors and ensure that their sacrifices were not in vain. Through advocacy, education, and activism, we can create a more just and equitable world for all people, regardless of their background or heritage. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin. We trust that this very special message has expanded your understanding through the insights shared by our highly esteemed producer, Elder Baba Jelani Bamani Dembe, founder of Majestic Mind Mental Liberation Series Special Message. Remember this, it is essential to honor the ancestors. We have a unique connection to the ancestors. They endured many unwarranted struggles, preserved our melanin-rich culture, and passed down invaluable wisdom through many generations. By honoring the ancestors, we pay honorable tribute to our roots and draw great strength and much-needed inspiration from the unwavering resilience and royal legacy that has paved the way for our present and future generations. Ancestral reverence is a powerful way for us to continually uphold our own melanin-rich identity, heritage, and cultural legacy. Here is an ancient Alkebulan proverb to keep in mind. If you think you are too small to make a difference, you have not spent the night with a mosquito. Remember this as well, whenever you are in the presence of anyone, saying, "They don't see color," it actually means, "They don't see you." We acknowledge and honor the indigenous name of our glorious continent as Alkebulan. This name means Mother of Mankind. In various African languages such as Akuyu, Swahili, and Kemet, referring to ancient Egypt, and rejecting the terms Africa or African. As royal members of our melanin-rich culture nation, we must strive for knowledge of self for greater personal awareness. Always treat yourself kindly and seek to live a totally awesome and gloriously fulfilling melanin-rich culture life. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. So, like, subscribe to stay updated, and share this very special melanin-rich culture link with everyone that you care about and that really cares about you and all of yours as well. And thank you for listening to this enchanting special message titled Unveiling the Shadows, Healing from Stockholm Syndrome in Our Melanin-Rich Community. Stay woke. Ashe.